Shalom Aleichem and welcome to Machin Le'ira. We are in the season getting ready for Pesach. There's so much talk about all the mitzvahs that we do on Pesach, the Dalet Kaises, the Matzah. So it's a proper time to brush up on some of the halachas, specifically on the wine for the Dalet Kaises. Now, a lot of what I'm going to say today is more applicable to a regular Shabbos, because we know that regular Shabbos we have the mitzvah of Kiddush, and the Rabbanim Mesakin that the Kiddush shall be done ala kos. There are some exemptions or some plan B that could be used for Kiddush in the regular Shabbos that obviously cannot be used for Pesach. For example, on a regular Shabbos we know that if push comes to shove, you could replace the Kiddush ala kos with making Kiddush on Challah. You definitely cannot make Kiddush on Pesach, on Challah for sure not. But even on Matzah, you don't have that option, as the Alter Rebbe says in Siman Tov Ayin Beis Seif Chav Ches, I Efsher Lekadesh Ala Pas. You don't have the option of making Kiddush on the Pas because you have to have Arba Kaises, and the first of the Arba Kaises is Kiddush. The only question is, now that we know for sure that you need kaisos, because you have to have the mitzvah of the Rabbanim of Dalet Kaises, what does the kais have to be with? So typically we say it's yayin, and yayin is always the best. But what are the different stages and levels of what's the best wine, what's secondary, what's the preferred wine, v'chulu v'chulu. So let me start off with a din in Hilchis Shabbos, Siman Reish Ayin Aleph, Seif Aleph. The Alter Rebbe gives you the background that the mitzvah of Kiddush in Shabbos, Kiddush means to sanctify, to make holy. Min HaTorah, Zocher Yom Shabbos L'Kartzai, you fulfill it when you daven Ma'ariv and you sanctify, you make the day of, and you verbally say how the day of Shabbos is holy. The fact that we come home after we daven Ma'ariv and then we say Kiddush again, and we use a cup of wine, that is a mitzvah de Rabbanan. I shouldn't say Sachakol. The mitzvah of Kiddush min HaTorah, you fulfill by saying Ma'ariv and identifying and pointing out the holiness of the day of Shabbos. Kiddush ala kos is the Rabbanan. Now don't push it away. It has a lot of importance, and actually on the Dalet Kaises, as I mentioned over there, dafka has to be on the kos, because even though you're making a kiddush, but that kiddush cannot be replaced by any other thing. The Rebbe asks a question: why is it that in the Manishtana we don't find that the kid asks anything about the Dalet Kaises? He asks us about matzah, about maror, about mesubim, about matbilim. Why doesn't he ask about the Dalet Kaises? Which is also strange that suddenly we're drinking so much wine. And the Rebbe brings from the Maral, because the kid only asks questions that are about mitzvahs min HaTorah. So matzah is a mitzvah min HaTorah. There's also questions about matbilin, and there's a question about maror, matbilin and mesubin. So the Rebbe answers, those are different because those are at least connected to a mitzvah min HaTorah. Heseba is done by matzah, and matbilin is done by maror, whereas the Dalet Kaises is only with the Rabbanan, and even the Dalet Kaises part is only with the Rabbanan, and Kiddush ala kos is also only with the Rabbanan. Okay. Now, before I get to dissecting what will be a proper kos to use, I want to quote a din that we learn later on in Hilchis Shabbos. Later on in Hilchis Shabbos, in Siman Reish Sadik Beis, when it talks about the halacha of Mincha Shabbos afternoon. So it says what is the seder of davening Mincha. So in Sif Gimel, the Alter Rebbe says that when you take out the Sefer Torah, you're about to take out the Sefer Torah for Kriyas HaTorah Mincha, the minig is to add a pasuk. What pasuk do we add? V'ani tfilasi l'cha Hashem eis ratzin elikim b'rav chazdecha aneini be'emetz yishecha. Why do we say that pasuk Mincha afternoon? Says the Alter Rebbe, Alpi Mashadarshu Chachamim, based on the drash the Chachamim say on this pasuk, on different pasuk. The pasuk says, Yasichu bi Yoshvei Shar Uneginois Shoisei Secher, that for the Eibishter Kvayachol, even those who are drinking wine, drinking beer, will sing and dance and praise me. And David HaMelech says, look at the difference between Jews and Lahavdil Goyim. Ribono shel olam, einu mezu kishar u'mesaylam. This nation of ours is not like the other nations. Other nations, when they drink and they're merry and they get drunk, they go wild, they go nuts. But us, we drank wine, we're happy, we have a day of celebration, but then we come, what does the wine do to us? It makes us happy in the sense that we actually come to shul. And we come to shul and we daven better and we learn better. So this is a sign of shvach for the Yidden, that despite the fact that drinking alcoholic beverages doesn't drive them crazy, doesn't bring them to a maimon matzav of shiflus in Yonei Elam Haza, farkert, that brings them to shul. Vani svilasi l'chasha meis ratzin. Now, I don't see anybody bringing this as a specific another proof that the Kiddush should be made on an alcoholic drink. Because I'm going to discuss other drinks which are honorable and tasty or whatever, but nobody I saw bring this, since we see that we say Vani svilasi as a proof to what alcohol does to Yidden. Maybe this is a preferable drink to use dafka alcohol. But I just figured that that's a good thing to add. Now, so wine is the most preferable drink to use for Kiddush. Because as we know, wine has two qualities, or even more than two qualities. It's a most dignified drink, a most dignified beverage. You don't just guzzle down wine. Wine is a chshivas. And wine is soyed. It brings nutrition and it satiates a person. And wine is yisamach leva lekim v'nashim. Wine brings happiness, brings cheer to people. It has a lot of qualities. So wine is a chush of a drink, and people drink it. You don't just drink it stam as it's part of a meal. It's a kviyah suda, and it brings simcha. So that is a standard quality that there is in wine, and that's why the most preferable drink to use for Kiddush obviously should be wine. Now, great things are said about Kiddush and wine. For example, Chazal tell us, Hazoyer b'Kiddush hayoyim ala yayin. This is the Gemara in Shabbos Taf Chav Gimel. If somebody is careful that he makes Kiddush and wine, Zoicha umemale garbe yayin. He merits to fill up barrels of wine. Umarichim loyoma v'shnoisa v'elam hazeh. And the Gemara in Megillah Daf Chav Zayin Amud Beis says that somebody was once asked, what chusin do you have that you live a long, happy life? So he says, Bama arachta yamim, miyamav loy batalti kiddush hayoyim. I never jumped over. I made sure to make Kiddush. So that gives me the schus of arichas yamim. In Pirkei de Rabbi Lezer it says, Kol ha-mevorech al yayin beleilei Shabbosos. Anybody who makes Kiddush and wine on the Shabbos nights, marichim lo yoma v'shnoisa b'olam hazeh, v'yosifu lo shnois chayim lo elam haba. So now, is this something that's unique for Kiddush or Kiddush and wine? I don't know. But let's start with the base. The base is that to make sure to make Kiddush, and if wine is the most preferable one, it comes along with a lot of perks, a lot of rewards. So that's what how Kiddush should be done. There is a whole long discussion in Hilchas Shabbos, in Simin Ayin Reish Beis, where it discusses about a concept called Chamar Medina. Now let me tell you, Chamar in Aramaic means wine. Medina means of the country. There are certain drinks that will be considered like the wine of the country. It's not really wine, but it's a good replacement for wine. It has many of the qualities what wine would have elsewhere. This is a plan B. This is all based on the Gemara in Pesachim Daf Kuf Zayin Amid Aleph. The Gemara says a story. Zimna Chada Ikla Ameimar La Asrin. Ameimar once came to our city. V'lei Havalan Chamra. And we didn't have wine for him to make Havdalah. I seen a lei shichra. We brought him beer. It's alcoholic, but it wasn't wine. It's not made from grapes. V'loy avdil. He didn't make Havdalah with it. And it says he went to sleep because he didn't want to eat. He didn't want to eat without making Havdalah. Lembachar. Next morning, tarachna. We went out of our way and we found wine. We found out of our way and we went and we found wine. Va'avdil. He made Havdalah. V'tarn midi. And then he ate. This is the story that happened one year. Lashana, next year, Ameimar came back to us. Su ikla le'asrin. He came back to our place. Le'haval and chamra. We again didn't have wine. So the story replayed itself. I seen a shichra. We brought beer. And he sees what's going on. Last year, you also tried to push that on me. So Ameimar said, if I see that they keep on giving me beer, Chamar Medinahu. This must be the wine of this country. What wine is in other places, this beer is sort of the replacement of the wine. So Avdil, he made Havdalah, V'tarn Midi, and he ate. So when Ameimar established this concept, there is something which is a Chamar Medina. This is a big machlokes in the Shulchan Aruch. What qualifies to be Chamar Medina? The Rambam hold that nevertheless, Chamar Medina is not preferable for Kiddush. Kiddush has to be done on wine. The Rosh, the Ri, they all hold that you could use Chamar Medina for Kiddush, and it's both shittas are brought in the Shulchan Aruch, and as we will discuss. Now, I'm going to go to the end first. Even though there are many reasons and many ways you could use Chamar Medina, the Alter Rebbe, after this whole long discussion of bringing all these opinions, in Siman Ayin Reish Beis, the last line of Sif Yud Aleph, he says, but Mikol Makom, nevertheless, mitzvah min amuvchar lekavish la'olam alayayin. It's always better to make Kiddush on wine. If you have wine available, and the wine is normal tasting wine, the qualities what wine has, the checklist of all the milas that wine has, nothing else has those qualities, and therefore wine is always the most preferable one. So what do we find? We find two things that have to be discussed. Number one, we find that people do make Kiddush on other items, which they would call Chamar Medina. And then you find that halacha states where you're going to push the limit and accept Chamar Medina, there might be a difference between the night Kiddush and the day Kiddush and Havdalah. By day Kiddush and Havdalah, we will allow ourselves to accept Chamar Medina. The night Kiddush, because that is the main Kiddush is what Shabbos, when Shabbos enters, and on top of that, the night Kiddush also has a ceremony attached to it. You don't only say Barei Pri Hagafen, you say a whole bracha afterwards. Whereas the day Kiddush, it's basically just the bracha. So therefore, that is a reason why the day Kiddush, it's more preferable to make Kiddush on beer, a mashka if you don't have wine, than bread, because if you do it on bread, you don't see the Kiddush. You're saying Hamaitzi, and that's it. Whereas, and other times where that's not an issue, you could use Chamar Medina. But people refrain from using Chamar Medina for Friday night because there is a shita that says Chamar Medina is not good. So the main Kiddush, you use wine, and Havdalah and Shabbos day, you'll find people do Kiddush on other things. What are the other things? So there are a lot. This is a very big discussion. I'm not even going to get into the discussion of grape juice. Is grape juice wine or not? That is a topic for itself. Wine is pure, nothing added to it. That's what real wine is. We know that the Torah says that you're not allowed to have sa'ur and dvash in anything that was brought to the Mizbeach. So wine, there was nesachim with wine, nothing was allowed to be mixed in. So much so that according to some opinions, even a drop, the Rambam says, even a drop of something that was mixed into the wine, sugar or anything, could ruin the wine for the Mizbeach. The wine means squeezed grape juice, that's it. So if we put in sugar or if you put in other things, it might be, it's not wine that would be kosher for the Mizbeach. Others say that maybe that's something unique that only applied to Sa'ur and Devash. But whatever it is, all we know for sure, wine is genuine, untampered, unmixed. And the second you're putting things in there, it's not anymore original wine. So in the Mizbeach, it wouldn't be used. So that becomes a machlokes. Do you have to make Kiddush on wine that could only be used in the Mizbeach? Or that's in the Mizbeach halacha. For Kiddush, as long as it's a good wine, as long as it's a good tasting wine, it's good enough. So L'Poyel, this is a machlokes. L'Poyel we paskin, if the wine is good and actually better tasting, because you added sugar or whatever chemical, whatever they put in there, makes the wine better tasting, and it's still wine, mevushal wine could even be better than non-mevushal. So in Hilchas Mizbeach, Ataka wouldn't use it. But the Gabi, the tasting of what is wine, many people lean towards being able to allow themselves to use yayin mevushal because of this, that it tastes better and it doesn't deviate from the qualities of what the wine is. Now, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch and Siman Ayin Zayin Siv Vav says it is still preferable to use yayin that's not mevushal because it's genuine wine. But others don't do that because as I said, some people say that the mevushal wine is actually better tasting. Okay, that is one issue. Incidentally, there is an interesting shaila which is brought in Shailas Shuvas Chacham Tzvi. What happens if you have your standard of what wine you prefer to use for Kiddush, and you filled up your cup, and you're about to make Kiddush, and you realize, it's not exactly what I like. I would prefer the other wine for Kiddush. Is it too late? Do we have the rule of Ein Ma'avirin ala mitzvahs here? So everybody agrees that if you filled up a cup of wine, and then you realize you had better wine that you want to use, you're allowed to just pour it back into the bottle and switch it with the wine that you prefer. So let's go to the Chamar Medina issue. When the Mechaber brings this halacha, the Mechaber says that Chamar Medina is allowed to be a replacement for wine, b'mokim she'ena yayin matzui, where wine is not found. Yeah? So then you could be mekadesh al sheichar u'sha'ar mashkin. You could make Kiddush on beer or any other liquid chutz min hamayim. Water is not a replacement. Now, no seltzer, no soda, even though it's fancier water, those are all no-nos. The Aruch HaShulchan clearly says, no soda, nothing. Why? Because what's the fundamental difference between soda and wine? Let's start with that, and then we'll start putting in the gray area. Water, you drink, you're thirsty, you drink water. Wine, you don't drink wine when you're thirsty. Wine, you drink when you want to fill up, when you want to sit down and have a nice meal. It's a chashuv thing. Wine, you give somebody a bottle of wine as an honor. You don't do that to bottles of water. Uvechein, water is in its own league. Water doesn't have the chashivas that we are looking to expect for Kiddush. Wine is, so anything that has a lot of the qualities of wine could serve as a replacement. So obviously, wine is the best, even if you're living in a city where, or you're the type of person that doesn't usually drink wine, but wine has its chashivas. How about mashka? How about vodka or beer or all these things? Now, why is it in the same playing field? It definitely doesn't have the same value or chashivas, as wine, but it has many other chashivas in it. People bring it liquor and all these things and alcohol that bring to a table when there's guests, and it's an honorable meal. And it's not, you don't drink it, you don't guzzle it down like water when you're thirsty. You drink it when you're in a good mood. It has a lot of chashivas. So therefore, if a person has wine, even if a person has wine, but if he likes the alcohol better, he likes this alcoholic drink better, or if the wine is too expensive, so then what most of the place can say is you're allowed to make, I shouldn't say most, a lot of places can say that will serve as the Chamar Medina as what we're saying. So you're allowed to make Kiddush by day or Matzah Shabbos Havdalah with those Chamar Medina. Nevertheless, there are those that still stick. And the Rebbe was very, very makbid. The Rebbe said many times that Kiddush machmir avayin. I just heard a story. The Rabbi Groner Olav Shalom said once by a Fabrenga somewhere. He says it was Tavshin Chav Gimel Parsha Shmini, and the Rebbe said the famous sikha that you don't drink. He doesn't want anybody to drink alcohol, and under 40 for sure not. Even over 40, very limited. So there was a person that went to Yechidus to the Rebbe then a couple of weeks later. And he said, "I'm making my 75th birthday, and I'm going to make a shtickle farbrengen, and because of the Rebbe's sikha, I am accustomed to, for years ready to make Kiddush on vodka. And now, because the Rebbe said this sikh, I'm afraid that I'm going to make Kiddush on vodka, and the young Bachrim are going to throw towels on me." So the Rebbe says, yes, if they're going to throw towels on you for making Kiddush on vodka, they're right. Because Kiddush you make, even a 75-year-old man should know that Kiddush you make on wine. Kiddush has to be made on wine. Now, I must say, there are many other Hasidim that do make Kiddush on vodka, Kiddush day. And there's a Kiddush within a Kiddush. Not only to make Kiddush on vodka, it could be because it's Chamar Medina. It's an honorable drink, it's alcoholic. Rabbi Vadia Yosef and Shalos Shuvas Yabia Eimer says that to be able to be used for Kiddush, it has to be an alcoholic drink. So this is an alcoholic drink. It has a lot of the qualities of what the Chachamim wanted. But they go a step further based on the Kiddush from the Rav Shitzer and based on the Kiddush that's brought in the Eshel Avram, the Buchach, and Siman Ayin Reish Beis, that when they make Kiddush in the morning, they don't even use a full becher. They use a small shot glass. And even when they use a small shot glass, they don't drink the whole shot glass. Whereas by Kiddush, you have to try to drink Roiv Kois, which incidentally goes back to my previous conversation. The non-mevushal wine is usually stronger. If the non-mevushal wine is stronger, it's more difficult to drink Roiv Kois at the period of time you need. So that's another reason why people try to drink mevushal. But the mashke, what some Hasidim make, they use a small shot glass, and you can't. They drink a small amount, and they're relying on the halacha of the Taz. The Taz says, "Well, yain, this whole shear that you have a certain shear, and only a certain shear you can make a bracha rishona, bracha achrayna, doesn't apply on these alcoholic drinks, because for alcoholic drinks, even the smaller amount does the job. You can make a bracha achrayna even that. So therefore, they would make Kiddush in a small shot glass, and even that they would make a bracha. And they wouldn't even drink the whole thing. But again, remember, I started off with Alter Rebbe that if you could drink wine, if wine is available, wine is always the most preferable one. So now let's move on to another possibility. How about if you don't have wine, or it's very expensive and you don't have alcohol? How about tea, coffee, beer? Beer is alcohol. Beer is up there. So it is brought. Tea and coffee have another issue. We just spoke about the alcohol. You don't drink a lot. Tea and coffee, you don't drink a cup of tea within 4 minutes. You drink down the whole cup. Why within 4 minutes? Because you have to be able to make a bracha. You have to drink it b'chtei achilas pras. You have to eat a shir b'chtei achilas pras. Since a cup of coffee can take you 7-10 minutes to finish off because it's hot, there's a gatzna shilas of the bracha. Or do we say, since that's the way you drink coffee, that's the way you drink tea, so even those who are allowed to you make Kiddush or Havdalah and coffee and tea, they would tell you 2 issues you have to take in consideration. Are you going to rely on the fact that this is a longer period of drink, and that's fine, because that's the way you drink, so that's the halacha is good there, the bracha is good there? Or should you prefer, it shouldn't be so hot. It should be lukewarm, so you should be able to drink it down in the shear. Second of all, you can't just make a chamar medina, a general chamar medina for coffee, because there are different types of coffees. Some people like black, some people like coffee with sugar and milk. So chamar medina would be for you everybody drinks coffee, but it will be for you what you drink often. So here too, if this tea, coffee, is brought to every meal, and practically we see people are kaveh with it, and it's a chashiv drink. Many say it would be a plan B for chamar medina. La halacha, we find that some are noeg to be mekel and allowed that you make Kiddush on beer and coffee and tea Shabbos by day or Havdalah, as long as you don't have wine or you like this better. But the Ktsois Shulchan, from Chaim Noah says no way. You always have, these drinks are not on the level of vodka. And then when you're talking about other drinks, lower level than that, remember the Shulchan Aruch said that mayim, anything that you drink for when you're thirsty, doesn't even enter the playing field if it could be a replacement of chamar medina.